all of you who are attending this very special, panel session. This is part of the Golden Door 2021 awards. And we have something this year called Generative Dialogues. And today is the last penultimate generative dialogue on the post-COVID future of children. I'm going to be your host. My name is Tallulah D'Silva. I am an architect, and I'm also the winner, the joint silver winner of the Golden Door 2020 awards last year. And I won this award for essay and blog writing. And I'm so happy to have made the connection and joined my family of writers and truth seekers. Today, of course, we have fantastic, panelists with me, and they are lovely friends. We'll love each of them for the work that they do. We have, Anna Weiching, and she is basically a healer, and she's from Malaysia. She's joining us from Malaysia. And she basically works with natural healing. She comes from a family of healers. Both her parents and their parents were healers. And she has also worked with children with their mental and emotional well-being. And she's also been, connected to an area of work which basically looks at trafficking and child abuse. So welcome, Weiching. We also have, Karen Shaw. Karen, of course, joins us from the UK. And she's basically an empowerment coach, parenting empowerment coach and author. She has dedicated her life to children, in the nurturing care of the well-being of children. And she feels, according to her, that all children are gifted and special. And of course, finally, we have our dear friend, Rami. And he's, of course, well known. And he's been spoken about on a number of news channels, including the BBC and CNN, as the world famous toy smuggler for his phenomenal humanitarian work in Syria, where he has basically worked with orphan children and children that have been affected by deprivation. Today, what we are going to do is basically our focus, of course, will be on children, what they're going through, and the future that we are going to be exposed to. And today the format, of course, is something called Generative Dialogues. And it basically means that, while we are conversing, while we are, speaking to each other, we will speak first, then we will listen to the others, and we will also pause and reflect on each of the questions that are being shared, each of our thoughts that are being shared. I would like to now open, the discussion, the dialogue, by asking each of our panelists to, fill in the gaps and do a long description of the work that they do, and largely focus on the work with children they've done before the pandemic. I would like to invite Rami first, and to share one of his writings about, this transformational moment of his work with children in Syria.
Thank you, Tallulah. Thank you, everyone. And I'd like to really thank Tahira for inviting me on this, magnificent event that we've been long awaiting for. And due to the pandemic, now we are meeting through this high-tech technology systems. My name again is Rami Adham, and I am a Finnish Syrian living in Finland for the past 33 years and father of 6 myself. So without going into extreme details, you all know the Arab Spring that took place about 10 years ago, starting with Tunisia and then swiped through Yemen, Egypt, and also Syria. Syria is my birth country. Aleppo is my city. Aleppo is the oldest city in the world, 12,000 some years old. And me watching my birth country going through turmoil since 2011, it just couldn't really allow me to live normally. I was stuck on TV channels, and I was watching in horrifying feelings the killing, the systematic killing that's been taking place in Syria. And what struck me the most is the pain that she goes through and went through at these times. So I wanted to take part. I wanted to do something as a father, as a man. So I decided to travel myself in 2012 to Syria, and there that was a life-changing trip, to be honest with you. I have my life before was something, and after that trip was a completely different trip, because it has opened my eyes to so many things that a little can someone provide for people, that it could mean the world for them. I had not on me. I had few thousands of dollars on me, which is my savings, and but what I took with me is toys at that time. You know, being father of six, and all these kids here have toys and all that. So after our discussion here, what are you going to be going to Syria? And they were worried. Why would you go to Syria? It's a war. People are dying there. And I told them there are children just like you guys who have lost a lot of things, everything pretty much in there. And I'd like to see what would they need. And my 3 year old says, and I know what they need. They need toys. So I took the toys that they collected for me, and I went to Syria, and that was it. I mean, the rest is history. And I since then I've traveled 6 7 times a year so far. 37 humanitarian trips to Syria. Just got back about 3 weeks ago, and uh, things has never been to change. And this Syrian uprising turns into a massive genocide, where close to a million, and as you all know, 12 million people has been displaced. Internally, about 6 million, and externally, about 5.6 million all around the world. Turkey, Europe, United States, and everywhere in the world, they're just Syrians been there applying for asylums and running for refuge or for safety. Uh, Situation in Syria is unbearable, and I tried during my trips to convey as many messages as I can to the world through the work I have done, and I just couldn't do it justice, because the things you see in a war zone, it's something no one really should see. And the most painful thing to me as a father and as a Syrian is seeing these children deprived of every single basic rights they ought to have, which is a playground, a school, not to mention losing their parents and becoming an orphans, and losing a way of surviving, eating or drinking clean water, and having a chance to go to school. We all know that 2 million Syrians are deprived from school or not attending school in Syria alone, and that is a huge number. This could be the loss of generations to come. And I have tried to focus. There's been so many things that I needed to do, and I came to realize that I'm just a one man, and I can't do everything myself. So I have to focus on something. So I decided to focus on children, which is basically represents the future of Syria. And I've decided to do as much as I can to help alleviate the pain and try to support in any way I can, whether it is providing food or building schools and refugee camps, not to mention the 58,000 toys I have delivered to these children inside Syria, which to them means the world. And I just witness these stories and these beautiful faces when they just anxiously waiting for me to open the bag and start delivering them toys to each single one of them out there. And it's just a festival of joy when the toys just open up and they start having their own and they run away with it. And it's the perfect mental support, and that we can, that someone do still remember them, someone do give them what they've been looking for. There are a lot of humanitarian agencies and NGOs are operating inside Syria, but they're all just focusing on providing food and providing tents and mattresses and all that, food baskets such as, rice, oil, these kind of basic food things. But the child doesn't really care about what he eats. He cares about a toy. He wants to go at night to that little corner in his tent and play with this his long, faithful friend, sincere friend who can he talk to, or even kick a ball with friends later. It's just something we all know. I mean, we all have kids, and for those of you who does, when a father travels for a week or a couple of weeks somewhere for work and comes back home, the only things that kids care about, not how much money daddy made on that trip, it's that what daddy has brought us from either chocolate or toys. So and I knew that this is just magic words. So I make sure that I have always truckloaded of candies, biscuits, cakes, lollipops, all those little nice things. And on top of that, of course, the toys that I make sure always to take with me. Now, since the whole world knows what I do, I get thousands of toys every month from all over the world, and I don't know where to store these things anymore. So I try to travel with them, ship them to Turkey, and from Turkey, deliver as much as I can to Syria. And whoever asks me inside Syria, they need like 1,000 toy for a certain event, they know where to call and who to talk to. It's me. So
Thank
that
you,
is
Rami.
in a nutshell. I'd like to share some of these thoughts with you guys. I appreciate you. Bless you all.
Thank you, Rami. I also wanted you to read the excerpt from your writing about, the story of Meral, but we'll come to that a little later. Yeah. Whiting,
Sure.
Dr. Whiting, can you tell us about your work with children? This is largely before the pandemic.
Yes, actually, my work with children starts with them being a tiny little divine spark. So I was in a fertility clinic working in integrative medicine, and I help women become fertile, and also for men to have their sperm motility higher as an energy healer. And so I've seen so many babies born, and I take them through actually the entire birth cycle into the time when they're birthed. Plus, now some of them are 14 years old, 15 years old. So it really gives me joy to see this little seed of creation just grow in a human beings, right? So, and I've worked with children from many different ages. I'm working with a 2-month-old right now with a rare genetic disease, Dravet syndrome, it's called, in which case he would have disabilities or death by the age 2. So I've already worked with children who have Perthes disease, for example. It's a degeneration of the hip, and the whole hip would just degenerate. And then I've worked with children teenagers who have been pumped up with drugs and about to go into the Institute of Mental Health. And then it took me about 4 sessions to find out that she had been molested by her father. And so that led me to working with children who have been sexually abused, to what you alluded to. And then I work with children who are afraid to go back to school, and then try to identify what is it that is making them so nervous to go back to school. Was it the presence of a menacing teacher, or was it trouble with some of the schoolwork? And I've helped even a French child for also about the age of 14, and to identify that it was the French grammar, and so we can identify where all the stresses and strains come from. And then I work now, of course, with their mental health through their families, and who've asked me to come and chat with them, and we play games, and then of course we have our toys, Rami. So we use all that we can, and I always recommend that they have a little toy with them to hold in their hearts, because this allow them to, of course, yes, to be a little bit more secure. And that's what toys do. And having said that, I want to thank you, Rami, for bringing up my father's memory, because that when I was 5, that was what excited me the most of all the toys that he was bringing back. And bringing back to present time, I actually had a hospital of stuffed toys. So now I'm a healer and doctor. I'm a doctor in therapeutic medical qigong. So I actually do healing work on an energy level. which includes mental and emotional and physical. So there are many other aspects also working with adults, but today we'll focus on the children's health and nutrition, and also their artistic side, which will help them connect back to their spirit and their soul in these times of shutdown.
Yeah, I think, what both of you, Rami and Dr. Wai-Ching, have mentioned here is whether it is toys or whether it is chocolate, I think children associate, with this as, some sort of a gesture of love, right? And sometimes
Exactly.
it is not like you said, money, but it is that gesture of love, touch, where they can sort of feel love, affection, of being
And
wanted, of
before.
being, yes, yes, yes. Karen, tell us about the work that you have done, with children. Yeah, especially
Certainly
with
will.
children.
Yeah, it's I created Parenting Magic Method, which is I spend so much time with parents, because when parents think that they've got issues with their kids, or rather that their kids have got issues, it very often starts with the parents. So if we can get the parents to look at things differently, to just have a different perspective, and a lot of the time come from love. A lot of parents are in this place of conditionally loving their children and don't realize there are so many conditions put on them. But if I go back to the reason I started all this, is because I am a single mom of 3 boys, and I've been single for 21 years. So from them being quite small, brought them up, and they've all got unique challenges, from having brain hemorrhages and lots of medical conditions, and mental health issues and self-harming, and my youngest son on the autistic spectrum and an insulin dependent diabetic. It made me want to do a better job than I was doing, especially with the younger one who was at special needs school. I wanted to look at a different way of connecting, and I'm going to say respecting children. And Rami actually said it, didn't he, when it's, the children that you were talking about, Rami, that are deprived of their, natural rights. I think children are here because they are not able to be their true selves. They're squished into boxes, and we want them to behave in a certain way and do certain things. And so even having the 3 boys of my own, I also worked with displaced children, teenagers, in fact, and offered them a home. And one of the things that I found that they didn't have respect from people. So they didn't have self-esteem, and they didn't have their own dignity. And I think that's so important that we provide this for children. And I fostered, and it was to give them a taste of the way the world can be, because it can be kind, and there is so much kindness and love. So I have worked with children a lot. I worked with the excluded year 11s from school, and it's a way of working with them that is probably slightly different to the usual, the old paradigm. And then the more I did that, I realized it's the adults in their life that also would benefit from thinking a different way, looking at it a different way. And I think the important thing for me is, the book I've written, which is A New Approach to Behavior and Communication, I'm really into the whole energetic communication and the importance of everything we think, do, say. Every single movement we make, everything is affecting our children, isn't it? And it's the energy behind it. So energetic communication is really important to understand, and how much that affects our children. So I think I do a combination of working with parents and adults, parents, teachers, and the children as well.
Awesome.
I like what you said there, Karen, that, while we are talking about children, it's equally important to talk about parenting, And it's equally important to talk about parenting. And, when we handhold, certain tools to parents on how to treat their child, I think it just enforces what you've said, to have dignity. And the other thing is observation, it is absolutely true. Children are great observers. Whatever you tell them, they see whether you are practicing that, so they're constantly watching you. And only then it endorses also something that you tell them to do, so thank you
True.
for that, Karen. Yeah.
Okay.
I think now it's time for us to talk about the long enduring pandemic that we have all been in for more than a year now. Something that started and we thought would go away very quickly, and we were very impatient about it. And more importantly, I think we have now realized its impact, because children have been out of school, and I was just trying to, jot down, and I'm happy, that Karen, you are here today, because nobody really thinks about the unique needs of some of the children, who have different abilities, and they're completely isolated. But today, if you look at children, we have children that are glued to screens. We have children that are exposed to radiation because of that. We have children in isolation, children in abuse, abandoned, orphaned. And therefore, and also because of the pandemic, because they are also, their special needs are affected. So we'll highlight each of these and we'll talk about each of these. I would like to start with Dr. Waiching, because she works with healing, and, today we have a lot of children, because they're not going to school, isolated, glued to their screens, right? What has your experience been with dealing with children like this? And what do you think, we can do about it?
Tallulah, what Karen said was so important. We start with the parents, right? So I educate the parents first. And to even go into radiation, let's talk about radiation of the mind, of our thought forms from the parents. The children will pick up any fear translated through the energetic field, the morphogenic field. They'll pick that up. So we have to actually, in these times, which is very challenging for parents, whether they are facing financial problems, how to put food on the table, how to deal with schooling and so on. So we start with the parents. I always start with parents when I work with children. So in this case, I start with them by giving them, the parents, an idea, a feeling of safety within themselves in these times, that they have to be grounded, rooted, and anchored in themselves, so they can be the pillars, right, for the children. Because and I've taken also children through divorces, right? So we know that there's projection of energies, and the children will pick it up very, very easily, because they are sensitive and they are our teachers, actually, aren't they? So because they speak the truths. So we start with the parents, and then in this case, I try to have a different shift in perception, also with the children. A little fun here. So instead of a lockdown, which is the words that we are using, lockdown, which indicates perhaps a prison, right, or a cage, or a cave. Even a cave can be a safety zone. It can be warm, but we're going to shift it maybe to a sanctuary, or maybe to, when I play with the kids, like, it's tents. How children love to make tents out of cardboard and blankets, and you go in there and you read books. And so we read books also. So we started with this, like, I have lots and lots of books that we can, and then we suggest, we play these games, and then we start there. And then we do a little meditation, a rainbow meditation, both with the parents and the kids. So what happens is that the whole field is now more balanced, because the colors of the chakras, the rainbow colors, are more intact. And the parents can handle their stresses much more, and can actually cook better foods, and put the children to sleep a little better, because everybody's suffering from insomnia. right? A lot of people are. So let's go back to like radiation, your initial question, is that we are being radiated. You know, we are on the Zoom, like how many of us are more on the Zoom, right? More than ever, certainly I am. And then we're on the phone a lot. And so, and we all know about the dangers of the electromagnetic fields, let alone 5G. 4G is bad enough. I mean, how many of us have fatigue, headaches, neck strain, back pain, fibromyalgia, you know, even our feet hurt when we wake up in the morning without realizing that it's actually the radiation that's coming out of the TV, the iPads, the phone, you know, if you're in the office, the machines, the fax machines, Xerox machines, and so on, and the lighting, artificial lighting, right? Air conditioning. It's all causing what is known as positive ions in the air. And where we get negative ions, it's in nature, and we are all hunkered down like in the bunks during wartime, because this is equal to that, isn't it, from the oppression and the onslaught. And so yes, we are in this enclosed areas, and we don't realize that the enclosed areas has actually encroaching upon us. So we do have remedies, we do have it. So without having to spend any money, my advice is that we can actually use salt to even scrub ourselves when we take showers, right? Because it changes, this is negatively charged. So we must know, we have learned, I think a lot of us, we are all on a learning curve on how to take care of ourselves. So this one we can use on ourselves and the children. And then we have all the advice of vitamin C and so on, which we can talk about in nurturing nutrition. But there are products, and I implore everybody to just go buy the products. I endorse this brand because it's 5G calibrated, but you don't have to. Just go get something to put on the phone, on the computer, the iPads, whatever the kids are touching, because the children have to work online as well for their schools, don't they? So we are being radiated constantly. And what happens with this radiation is that it upsets our endocrine glands. The pineal gland gets more calcified, the thyroid is up off balance, and then also the thymus, so we are more anxious. And then, of course, the adrenal glands are releasing more cortisol. Cortisol will increase the adrenaline and fight and flight patterns, and also will run through the entire body, the system, into the cells. So we are more stressed without knowing why. And then we have the bickering and the fighting in the family among siblings, or just this very general contracted feeling of anxiety and unwellness. So once we know that this source of this radiation is one of the sources of anxiety and depression, then we can learn how to modulate our time on all these devices, and also modulate time for the children. So this is just a pure energetic aspects. I mean, we of course want to look at the content of what people are watching and how it's affecting our minds and our emotional body, and that in turn affects our physical health. So in terms of radiation too, there are, like, for example, what I'm wearing is protecting my head from radiation. It's from negative ions. And then we can have all these blankets that you wrap the children in. So people are now using these negative ions fabrics to take babies home from hospitals to protect them from all this radiation. Those are the people who know what's going on. So you mentioned radiation, so I'm addressing that first, and then we can go on from there. Also, in terms of radiation, we can detox by taking baths using Epsom salts or even soda. So there are ways to do that, and essential oils, to take hot showers to detox from radiation, besides the nutritional aspects, which we can go into later.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for sharing, these vital, tools, vital things that are there in our homes. And, it made me recall a memory of children that I work with, and we often, while we are locked down, like you said, it's fantastic to be locked down in nature. And, just like the advice that you gave of having worked with, salts and other things to limit the exposure of radiation, I think children have an innate, ability to be connected to nature. And, all across the pandemic, we were very lucky when we got opportunities to go to the nearby, lake or the forest, because you just feel at peace, one thing. And children can, freely swim, freely dive in a natural environment. And the lockdown has basically brought a lot of stresses in. There are a lot of young people also, affected by heart attacks, pressure problems, heart problems, something, that we need to be careful about. Karen, I've had so many friends, and I think, the situation in the UK is far different from what we see in India, because people who are differently able don't have accessibility. We have a lot of accessibility issues for people with different abilities, even the visually impaired. During the pandemic, how do you think this, issue has affected children and parents with different abilities?
It's affected them as much, if not more, because they live in a different world, they have a different perception, and they perceive things differently. And for me, it's so important that the biggest thing that we don't exude, Wai Ching, I love every single thing that she said. I agree totally. We exude this electromagnetic field, and the parents are in so much fear and worry that is what they are, influencing their children with. And so my biggest desire is that they could be more at home, I think, with themselves, if they were more peaceful. Meditation's fabulous, isn't it? If people meditated and were in a better frame of mind and healthier. And the other thing, all those things that Wai Ching has just talked about, so many parents are not aware of that side of things, so have no idea how much damage is being caused. And the children who have got, I think every child has got a unique need, a special need. And so this is where it's really important to give them the opportunity to express their needs or their uniqueness instead of shutting it down. And my belief is that we're all here to, experience life. Children are here to experience it, to experiment, to explore, to express and enjoy. And because we've got this awful thing going on, the parents have lost sight of the really important things for all children. And they're concentrating on something else, and that isn't what they're interested in. Rami said it at the beginning, you come home from working away and they're not interested in, was it a good deal? Did daddy do a good job? Has he made, it's, what have you brought me? And they are glad to have you back as well. It's the connection. The most important thing for all children is that connection. And that just comes from time spent with them, being present, being in the now. Because everything outside of that bubble for that child isn't important. So it's been a tough time, it really has. And it's the parents who, if they could find a way of changing the perspective, of aligning their energy. I work with children and parents in energy alignment, emotional rebalancing. Any emotion that anyone goes through is just that energy emotion, isn't it? It's got a frequency, it's got a vibration. And so it's to find out what we are carrying, parents or children, allowing that to be released, and then finding something else that we can put in that's of a higher vibration, a higher frequency, changing our focus, hopefully perspective, and really concentrating on what's important.
Tallulah, I'm so happy to hear Karen talk about frequency, because what I'm talking about is frequency medicine, and going back to what you were saying, being in nature, if we cannot go out to nature, let's bring in nature in, like plants. I think in a few panels we talked about plants, and I've been, relishing my orchids regrowing and bringing more plants in. And I work in an edible park garden here. So when I go out and I can actually put my feet on the ground, which is what is advised in Qigong practice. But, for many people who can't, I mean, 7.83 hertz is what the earth is supposed to be resonating at Schumann's resonance, as some of us know. So as I showed this, when we bring these kind of technologies that balance the destructive frequencies of the others that we have to use, this is 7.83 hertz, and it rebalances. And I advise parents to put it on their children here, on behind the pillow, and on their hearts when they're sleeping. So we are able to learn how to use frequency medicine this way, and also crystals. So the crystals are also transmitters and amplifiers of energies. And we know the crystalline technology in our phones, and this is also crystalline technology. It's advanced technology that we're going to, but we have to balance the 5G. We have to learn how to rebalance. And also it brings us back to the discussion of adaptability and resilience, because we are evolving. Human beings and children that are born, we are very different. The children, they know how to work on the computers. My little 2-year-old niece is like, just double click, and they are telling me how to work everything. And so they're different. And
Yes.
so I was looking at the question about future workforce. I mean, if they survive this, right, if we all survive and thrive through this, we are actually genetically changed, whether it's through the inoculations or radiation. We will be genetically changed, and we have to change. We have to adapt to being in this world. And if not, it's an experience, as Karen said. We experience it and we leave. And also the whole process of departure, leaving, transition, dying also has to be told to the children. So going back to the perception, what do parents say to the children when this thing like, Mommy, why do we have to stay in? Why can't I go and play with my friends? And they don't understand it. How do we shape this reality using our words and our imagination? How do we shape it so that it's acceptable for them and to make it safe for them? And everybody says, stay safe, stay safe. What does that mean? Safe inside here first and here. And so we are going through incredible changes, and going to the earth, as I know you work with children in ecology and environment, that is so important. Every chance we get, we have to breathe some fresh air. And if I may continue, I mean, speaking of fresh air, we have those masks. They have fibers in them that cause disease in our body. It's called Morgellons disease. Not many people know that. So we should invest in masks for the children especially. And I would show also the negative ions mask, which actually is like breathing air, or some really good quality one. Everybody should invest in really good quality N95, N99 masks. Forget about using those masks that is used, and we know that is of no use. So I'll go back to breathing fresh air, getting feet on the ground, and eating vital foods from the earth, organically grown if we can.
Thank you, Dr. Wai-Ching. I completely agree with you on that we need to, enforce this bond between children and nature in every way that we can, especially with the kind of impacts they have with exposure to, screen time around the computers, which will have a long-term impact. We are going to see these long-term impacts from a few years from now. It is said, that the pandemic is a war-like situation. And Rami, I would like you to make that connect, because you have been, in areas which have been enduring war, violence, and the impacts of that over a long period of time in Syria. I want you to, at this point, share the story of this little girl, Meral, right?
Right. Right.
Yes, yeah. And of course, what you have to say about the pandemic being a warlike situation for children.
Well, let me just answer the second part of the question. I just got back from Syria and being in touch with my people in Syria over this period of pandemic. It's first of all sad for me because I wasn't able to travel personally on the ground because of the pandemic, but I because of the travel restrictions and all that, I travel that along the zone. Turkey has seized or closed all entrances in and out from Syria, so it wasn't even able to enter Syria in the first place. But I was people inside, and to them inside Syria, they have experienced all kinds of death and hardship and deprivation and war and mass killing and even gas bombs and chloroform bombs, or they've seen it all. They have died from all types of ways possible inside Syria, and due to that, when it comes on top is the COVID era where people got infected, but it wasn't as large wide scale inside Syria refugee camps as we initially feared it will be, because we thought if the modern world or civilized countries are really going through hard times dealing with the pandemic, and they've been losing lives, and hospitals are packed with patients and intensive cares, and they got all the worlds of top technology equipments to treat these people and patients. What would happen is to Syrians who are living basically in a tent without no uh, basic necessities available, like clean water to keep hygiene, or clean food, or clean air, or a proper hospital, or electricity, or whatnot. Tons of stuff that humans do, they didn't have that. So we feared a lot that what would happen. The pandemic really struck hard in these refugee camps, but fortunately, uh, it didn't really affect much, because Syria was already these parts of liberated areas in Syria where these refugees are in or living in. It's pretty much locked from all sides, like a closed area. Nothing getting in, getting out. The disease was not able to get in as easily as in some other countries where the free traveling back and forth and in and out was, like here, for example, in Finland. So there was not much heavy cases of COVID in the beginning of 2020 up until now. But those, unfortunately, who got COVID inside Syria, those unfortunately died. And I know at least 8 people who I knew personally died inside Syria. I don't know any of children that has died in the in the pandemic, but uh, situation to the locals there, it wasn't as horrifying as being bombed by mustard gas or chemical weapon or bomb or barrel bombs, or a Russian heavy aircraft bombing systematically 200 times a day. To them, it was not as scary as comparison to what they experienced in the past years. So that is, in a way, it was relieving to know. And now, since I got back from Syria, the situation is very calm, and people are not really, worried much about the expansion or the spread of the virus. They live their life very normally, and I was very happy to see our schools loaded with kids. To them is the going to school. Like it's like the best part of the day. Unlike we live, we have to push our kids to go to school, go to school. They don't need to be pushed to school. They would gladly, and they wait anxiously for the next schooling day, because it's the best part and the most fun part of the whole day. The rest of the day after school is that sitting in the tent or sitting in the refugee camps where you cannot do much of anything. no playgrounds, no nothing. At least in our schools, there's some playgrounds. There's basketball court. There's a soccer court. There's nice swings and all kinds of activities that they do. So it's very, very, I mean, heartwarming to see the classes were loaded with kids and they were all doing well and having the achievement they deserve, day in and day out, all year around, which is very important for us and very essential. And coming to the first question about the girl called Miral that I have met over like, let's say, it was, I think, 6 years ago. I met Miral. One of those trips, I traveled to Syria in one of the refugee camps, and usually the kids are gathered in our schools in the closed area. So because otherwise we would have a chaos, we'd have tens of thousands of kids flocking from every direction once they know that Uncle Toy is in town. So we just try to invite as many as we can to our schools, and we close the doors. We have a private session where we have a program and food and candies and also toys for these kids. And one of those events, I remember kids were gathering around me and they were like wanted to see anxiously what I have, iconic toys I have. There was this nice, very, I mean, loving looking young girl. She was about, I think, 4 years old. She was from a distance. I noticed immediately her beautiful smile, and she was standing a bit from afar. And sorry. So she was just looking at me, and she was very beautiful, and she was saying a word. So I got very excited or very anxious to know who she is and why isn't she like verging in and trying to be, curious about life or toys and come and join the party. She was just standing from afar, and I just had to go to her and I told her, "Come here, I'd like to talk to you." And that is alone, that to me, I had to really mention it in my essay, where I could read some of those lines for you, if I may, if you allow me. I would read. And when I looked at her and I told her, "Come here, sweetheart, come here." I called her lovingly her shy smile with joy as she began to walk cautiously toward me. And I started asking, "What is your name, my love?" I leveled down to her height, and spoke to her imploringly. "Where are you from?" Because, refugee camps are loaded from kids from all over parts of Syria, so they just meet up in refugee camps. So I have to know, where are you from? What part of Syria are you from? And then she does not really reply to me. So she was giving me that smile, not word, not even making a sound. So I stroked her baby brown hair, comfort her as any father would do, and trying to connect with her in a way that I'm not a stranger. I'm here for you as well. She tried to muster up some courage to speak, but there was only silence. She continued to look at me with a smile, voiceless. And sweetheart, it's okay. I tried to assure her, the little girl, now you show me, what would you like from this bag? I wanted her to take part and, to tell me herself, what kind of toy she want from the bag. And so she chose absolutely, I told her, you can choose absolutely anything you want. I raised my voice to create an atmosphere of excitement to her, so maybe she would really speak up back to me. And a persistent silence, although in lingered on, her angelic smile remained the whole time. It was as if she had so much to say, but she just couldn't say it. And then I got really, sort of, worried. Why would she talk to me? And then I just continue on, carried on my own, toy distribution, and I couldn't. Start to ask. So I had to ask a friend of mine, what is exactly going on? Why is she really not speaking? He told me her name was and she cannot speak. I was like, oh yeah, maybe, she has a birth problem, or she couldn't really speak from birth. And he was like, no, she lost her voice with an accident. I was like, how could a child lose her voice? And I couldn't just focus on distributing toys anymore. So I had to really listen to the story in detail from my friend, and he told me she witnessed when the parents both were killed in front of her, and she was screaming her throat out from fear at that moment, and she ran in the streets and she got lost. And after they found her, she was still screaming, and hours later got her back. Ever since that day, she couldn't really speak because doctors just thought that she had lost her voice and capability of speaking because of that huge shock she went through, and she couldn't really use her voice anymore. I had to write a little bit about her, and now I'm so there are like millions of these girls inside Syria. This is the one we've got to know. I just took it very personal to every single trip, because I never see a child again. Always try to go to a different part of Syria. Always try to meet as many as possible from different places. But her, I always want to see. Now she's all big now. She's 10 years old, and she sends me sometimes WhatsApp messages. So cute, writing. She's doing well with her grandparents, and she called me Uncle Toys. Until now, she doesn't even know my name. Yeah, that's it. I just want the world keep in their mind, and not just Syrian kids. I'm worried about the kids in Afghanistan right now. And to be honest with you, I'm planning to set up a trip and see if I can get into Afghanistan and see if I can do something over there. I got like 15,000 toys packed up here, and I could just fly anytime I can. I'm just waiting for some of the local connections to connect with me and give me the green light to maybe move on to see what I could do in Afghanistan. I don't want to think that I'm just working for the Syrian kids because I am Syrian. I would like to, do the work and share this love with as many kids around the world as I can for as long as I live. Thank you.
Thank you, Rami. And when I first read this story, I was also very moved, but coming it from you now, I felt like a connection, all of us, reaching out to each other in this moment, where there's also a realization, that is being born, that it is a warlike situation for all children during this pandemic right now, because they are going through so many things. I mean, in war, we know, but the pandemic in many parts of the country, in many countries, is such that it is devastating for young minds, young hearts, our dear loving children. And in India also, many have lost their parents one after the other in hospitals. There are so many orphans right now, and because of the limitation of adopting these also, they're just limited to being in homes. How can we reach out to these children, as in our own ways, as parents, as citizens? How can we reach out to these children? And my question to you, Dr. Waiching, is I don't know how long the pandemic is going to take and how long this warlike situation will be for children. What should we brace ourselves, when this finally eases out?
This is a question of the heart. This is a question that we are all asking. Like Rami said, that just a moment of trauma can last a lifetime. And that's actually the work that is being done by me and by my cohorts, is trauma release from children, from just a simple smack from a father can really have long-lasting effects. And I've taken people through that, like men who cannot succeed in anything simply because of what the father said or what the mother did, a smack, to full-on sexual abuse, right, and torture. And that takes time to heal, and especially war-torn places. Just listening to Rami too, I just have a lot of emotions. I have to clear it from my own body as a healer because I'm taking that on, and I have to clear it because I know what else happens during this time, the war. The kind of aggression and violations on women and children sexually. And I fear for them. I really do. And I prayed hard for them. And also in orphanages and foster homes, they're terribly taken advantage of in heinous ways, So, and we know that from speaking with Jerome yesterday too, it's with the trafficking task force, that this is happening right now. And there are tunnels, there are, ships that are ferrying children, okay, for various reasons, including organ harvesting after what they've done with them. So it's a really hard time for people like us and for people on the front line, and we have to take care of our own sanity as well. What is really happening, and then we, like I said, we have to be anchor for the children. So how to be strong? I mean, even Rami can't be, and so I think what can really take us all through is being authentic. That if we really feel this way, it's okay for the children to see us this way, because then they can be honest with their feelings. It's the suppression of the feelings and even our anger and our, being, how did I say, being affronted by this oppression right now, by this loss of freedom, simple freedom to go out and play. We, even for us to speak up, it's difficult for us. What about the children? So I feel that we have to very sensitively maneuver ourselves on how to allow the children to speak and to act out even, because the children need to act out when they are shut down. Ordinarily, they need to act out their anger, their fear, because it's in the air, it's in the atmosphere. So we have to be honest with ourselves, say, okay, mommy is also feeling this way, but this is what we can do, and let's whether play this or draw this. So drawing and art and music and dance is really a very important thing in healing trauma. And I've already proposed that to the UNHCR. I don't know how much they've put it in place, but when they people play their own indigenous music and songs, they can heal because it takes them home and it resonates with something in them, that sound healing. So how long it's going to take, I don't know. It's going to take generations, I believe, if we want to also take into consideration what is put in our bodies right now through the aluminum, the adjuvants, the PEG, the graphene oxides that's in this so-called mRNA experimental drug. We don't know what is in there. We don't know how it's affecting people. In fact, we do know there are lots of adverse effects on children also, since they started inoculating children. Now, it's known with the doctors that this COVID virus does not affect children. Why are we inoculating the children? Why are we doing that in schools? That's a big question that parents have to ask. Why is that? No, that's why Rami said that the children are hardly affected. It's true. I mean, I have reams of graphs and write-ups and research papers, being in two groups, chat groups, a WhatsApp group just alone of medical doctors. It's all available. Anyone who would like, I'm happy to share. So we have that data. Why are the children being inoculated? For what purpose? What profitable purpose is this? We have to ask all these hard-hitting questions. What are we taking into our bodies, and why, and how many more? Because there are booster shots coming, right? And how many do we have to travel? And of course, kids need to travel. They need to learn. They need to learn of the world, and that's a very important part of education, is travel. So the loss of freedom is actually what we need to heal from, and fight back against. In all our ways. There are legal ways right now. Groups of lawyers are gathering, and so we have to lend our support to the schools. And speaking of schools, my very dear friend in Singapore also knows of children who have been offered to be inoculated by their parents, right? Because it's recommended. And so the children now cannot climb up the stairs. They used to be very good at sports, and now they can't even climb up the stairs without getting breathless. And so we have to look at children's health in the future. That's my concern. Of course, all aspects of health: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and our regenerative abilities as human species. How are we going to generate ourselves, rejuvenate ourselves in the future? Because also fertility will be affected, as we already see that babies who have been fed with mother's milk, mothers who have been inoculated, I don't want to use the V word, they are also developing blood clots, babies, newborns. And so they're dying. So when we talk about future of children, we have to look at the current situation. What are we doing to the children first? And then address that. Then we can talk about if there's a future and how the future might look, even to talk about AI, as children as workforce. Maybe this is part of the agenda. Perhaps we should ask all these questions as truth seekers and truth creators and truth speakers.
Before I get to that point, because there is a question in the Q&A about the future of children in terms of a workforce, I want to ask Karen, how do we help parents, because to deal with the psyche of children changing, because of the pandemic, because being in lockdown and various factors, the temperament of children is changing. And since you have worked with parents, what are the tools we can give? What are the, tips we can give parents to deal with this?
Okay, let me just first thank Rami for that, because it was extraordinary to listen to. And it brought me to where I live, and we don't have anything like that. We don't see anything like that. And yet what's happening here is we're at war with ourselves. Families, you know, it's so derisive, so divisive. The division is horrendous here. And we are losing respect for someone who doesn't think like us. And that's what's happening with the adults. And this is what we're showing the children. Everything that Wai-Chi has just talked about, I know, I've read this, and I still think a lot of people are not ready. A lot of parents don't want to know because their stance is firmly that the government is looking after us, it's keeping us safe, and we will follow what they say. It's heartbreaking and it's really difficult, because if the parents are not open to possibly looking at it from a different viewpoint, then they are going to do those things. And the effect on the children, we are already seeing the effects. And yet, moving on past it, this is my belief that this has to happen. It is part of, you know, the evolution. It is part of the new paradigm. And it was always going to happen this way. The children are coming through and they are different. We know they are. They are made up differently. We are moving, aren't we, you know, into this crystalline structure, and the children that are coming through, and they are living in a different world to us. We haven't got that much control. We can do our best. We can only do our best. We have to be authentic, true to ourselves, and think, what is it I can do? Thinking about the wonderful work that, you know, other people can do. And Rami goes out in the world, and Wai Ching's doing that. You do what you're doing. Some parents can only do the next best thing, that little step, to work out what's important today. What would be the best thing to say? And it's always coming from a parent. You don't know best. You only know what you've experienced. And Khalil Gibran's poem, you know, your children are not your children. They come through you. They are not of you. And they have their own journey. And my belief from a spiritual point of view is they've chosen this journey at this point of time. And when parents, adults, can be more reconciled to that, it's not as painful for them. So I do spend time looking at it from a different perspective, from a very spiritual, soulful aspect. For me, it helps. It makes things much better. And these children are here to do what they're meant to do in this time. And this is their journey, not ours. Yes, of course it's ours. We're involved in it in a different way, at a different level. If you are going to be loving, understanding, respectful, then you will be the best you. And I always say, a parent, if you are not looking after you, you're not the best you. If you're not true to yourself, if you are not authentic, if you're not working in your own integrity, then you're not the best parent you can be. And really, that's all we can be and do for the children that we've got. They have their own minds, their own souls, their own choices. And the last thing we want to do is affect them by the way we behave, the fear that we are carrying. And the other thing, as much as this isn't what we would want, and we want to protect future generations, of course we do, anger and fighting, and that isn't going to help, because that isn't good for us, and it isn't any good for what we emit, and then that affects our children. So I think it's that, isn't it? Is it tools and tips? It's be the best you. It's be connected. It's to be grounded. It's to meditate. It's to do all the things, connect with nature and have that loving heart. You know, we know how powerful the heart is. The electromagnetic field of the heart is incredible. And if we can send out love and peace, we know the good that that does. We know the good that meditation does on a mass scale. And so we can change things from that perspective, from that point of view. and just literally be the best us. I think it's when we can get to that point of acceptance, Tallulah, that this is what it is and we can only ever do our best. From the most peaceful, accepting place, while still doing something about it that resonates with us, that we feel we can do.
Well said, Karen.
Thank you, Rami. Thank you.
Well said, Karen. Very beautifully put. And I
Thank you.
think that is it. Children represent, what do children represent? They represent an innocence. They are born to be equal. They are resilient. And I think as they are being nurtured, they have to be nurtured keeping in mind these aspects. We'll go to the Q&A where there's one question. Mystics asks this question. She's awardee last year. She asks this regarding children as a future workforce in society. COVID has turned many industries to be operated automatically using robots. So how do we prepare our kids for this?
Who are you asking, Tallulah?
Anybody
I don't know
can
anything
answer
about robots.
Dr. Whiting?
Oh my gosh, I sort of alluded to that earlier, but I am actually amazed at the children and the teenagers now. I mean, the way they do hip hop, the dancing, the pop and locking, their facility in gaming. My God,
I know a lot of things about hip hop.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay, we talk about that. Great, let's do that. And also the gaming, I mean, they are really fast. And I think like these are just a new merging of our galactic beings, these are new beings that are on the planet. And, maybe they'll sail through this time. And they are teachers, like I've taken a divorce and they were all worried about this little girl being worried about the parents divorcing. And then she says, Mommy, I think you and Daddy should not live together. I'll just decide 3 days with you, 3 days with you, and then the last day I'll just decide who I want to spend time with. I mean, 11 years old, she's just found her solution. So we have to train and support our children to move into the future. Like yesterday we talked about the cryptocurrencies, that I'm learning about. And, it's crypto space and cyberspace. They get that. They get it because there are different matrix of soul coming in. The children are different, right? Karen, I'm glad you brought it all the way up to spirit. And then we see the spectrum. It's evolutionary. I mean, these children, teenagers, whatever, young adults, they're not going to be the same as us. And as for nature, I mean, I'm sure they love nature. They are amazing, like hang gliding, the surfing, surf skating. I just at 64 started surf skating, and it's not easy. So, but the kids would just jump on and they can just go. So I would like to say that I have hope, I have faith, and I have prayers that the children in the future would know what AI is. I mean, and artificial intelligence. Look, we're using artificial intelligence right now. And what is this? This is artificial intelligence. This is a calming device. It keeps me calm. So, and it has a certain frequency from a plant. The plant's not in it, but the frequency is here. I mean, is that not AI? And so we are already living it. And I feel that as one generation pass on, we won't even know. I mean, we've got, you remember the time when there was a phone where it's clunky? And then, I remember a few technologies. I'm sure you do too. I'm sure Rob does too. And so it's a matter of
I don't know anything about that. I'm 20.
That's right, Rami. We stay young that way, right? And then we do that. So we're also changing in our ways of knowing genetics, right? How are we changing? Maybe we are meant to be. I don't know. I don't like the idea of being tagged, but I mean, you look at sci-fi. I really enjoy sci-fi. So looks like it's a lot of the information is coming through, right? So back to the present time is that how do we adjust? If I may just go back to a bit of nutrition, and because that's going to help us when we get injected, barcoded, whatever we're going to do to remain human and remain connected to nature. And food, vital organic foods, superfoods. And so using seaweeds, mushrooms, very important for detoxification. And vitamin C, we talked about vitamin C, high dosage, and then zinc, um, magnesium, right? And D3 with K2. And coming to that, we need the sunshine. So we need to go out to the sun. And we are still galactic beings on planet Earth. We really need the sun to grow, just like the plants need to. So we just have to remember these basic things. And even when we get to do be partly robotic, so and maybe we can do all this. We'll remember what it's like to be human through the heart. And there's some marvelous sci-fi movies about remembering our humanity and our remembering our hearts as well. There's some amazing, amazing stories, and the Matrix even, so the and so many. And so I feel that in the evolution path, where we came from, our ancestors, and who we were as incarnated beings from the past, do we remember? No, we are not meant to remember, because we're meant to be present time. We're meant to be here living it. And so the best thing is to live it the best we can and balance the two and align in the center line the polarities of beingness. So, and now we are also being torn apart in the polarities, but also remaining in the center and and dancing, I would say dancing in this vortex, so that we can arise above that and the whole spectrum. And this image came to me very quickly when this quarantining happened, and I call it cocooning. I call it a cocoon because I could, when my meditation, and this is what I teach the children now and the parents, is this cocoon and be like a pupae, in there in chrysalis, and that we are just birthing ourselves. And as we burst forward, it's a butterfly of many colors, and each one of them choose a color they want to be, or many colors, or in a crystal that they're in. It's a lovely meditation, and then it raises our vibration, raises our frequency, and bring us back to a sort of a way to be a witness, to look at everything and help us to sail through what we are going through now. So we are also, it's very interesting that we are also relearning the technologies in our bodies, the AI that is our bodies, our own bodily systems. Many people were so cut off from their own feelings, their own sensations, and now when external stimuli is cut off, right? There are two ways to deal with it. And so there's one way to soar, and then to say, how do I really feel? How do I come out of this, in a positive way? And of course, there are negative stories too of depression and suicide. And we just have to let them go. They made their personal choices in this. And I've just been sent a family who hung themselves. How did the children hang themselves? Obviously, the parents did that first, or threw them across the cliff. And so the adults is who we need to reach out to. And then we can just start to learn how to download and upgrade our own technologies as galactic beings, because we know we have not actually developed our brains and telepathy, our communication. Maybe this is a time now in cocooning that we can develop all these skills. And so by developing the skills, I would like to say, Mystiques, that we are actually improving our AI, because that's what I like to say to that, is that we first focus our own AI. Thank you.
Yesterday, actually, we talked a bit about I think it was one of the early discussions on natural intelligence. And I like what you said, Dr. Waiching. I also work with children. I run a community classroom with some of my friends where we have a common safe space that children from the neighborhood can come to. And we find that the more time we spend outdoors, the children don't need their gadgets, they don't need their screens, they don't need anything. But the basic connection that they make with nature is absolutely amazing. Finding a little pebble, playing with the water, finding different ways to, engage with, let's say, the water, trees around, the pathway around, eating fruits that are freely available. And I don't know whether I can also share my perspective here, that if we are looking at a future where we are looking at robotics and, a lot of machines taking over, work, let's say, in a very industrialized kind of setup, I think it is very critical that, we let children reconnect their lost connections with nature. I think reconnecting with a natural world would be very critical. We are nearly coming to the end, of our generative dialogue. And I would like each of the panelists, to share either a few words, maybe a few sentences, or maybe a single word, as a sort of a incentive to parents today. Because when we are looking at a future, a post-COVID future for children, we have a lot of anxieties, we have a lot of worries, but we often like to do that, right? Share our stories of transformation, share our positives so that we can, make that a step of hope to others. So I want any of you can start and, share something that will give hope to parents when it comes to children and a post-COVID future.
I'll start. I just want to pick up on what we were talking about, this, future. We have this incredible buffer of time that we humans experience, and it doesn't happen instantly, does it? It's already happening, and then it will gradually happen. And the children are absolutely equipped to deal with that as long as we can support them. And for me, it comes back down every single time to being in the now, being present, and gratitude. Gratitude is so important, because when we can say all is well and it's as it's meant to be, and we're part of it and we're evolving, then I think that definitely helps me and helps the families that, I deal with. Gratitude is so important, because there always is something to be very grateful for, even if it is looking at, it could be worse, because there always is something. And then you can change it round and just be grateful for being, for experiencing, having the people in your life you've got in your life, for all the good things that there are. And we're advancing, we are elevating, transcending. We are going through a time that it's meant to be this way right now. So being present and being in the now. Not don't sweat the small stuff, as they say.
I could add to that, if I may. I'd like to use the word that Karen used, is gratitude. I totally agree with you, Karen. And I could, use that word into my own final words for you guys here is being a parent, being a father of 6. I would love to urge all of those who are watching or who are going to watch this in the future, is that make your kids involved in world's problems. They have to be part, or they have to be aware of what's going on. around the world, especially for kids like them somewhere else. That first, they have to be grateful on what they have. Me living in Finland, considered to be the safest, most happiest country in the world. Finland is recently being chose to be the happiest country in the world. Living in a nature beautiful environment, full of water, full of lakes, forests, a lot of berries, a lot of berries and strawberries around us for free. You just walk and eat. So this in itself is a huge blessing, and kids can take these for granted, like it's just meant to be. They don't understand, especially when we live in an era where every single kid is pretty much glued to their gadgets, to their mobiles, to their Netflix or whatever and whatnot. So it just take them or depart them away from what is really happening around the world. And I try to always speak to my children that, when we're having dinner, eat your dish completely, because what you leave on that dish will go to garbage, and that was gone to garbage. There are 400-500 kids would love to have as a bite or have to eat it. There are kids who would give anything to have a fraction of what you have. So think of them and make a day. We came together to make a day in a week where we eat less or we don't eat much at all. We just try to survive on the basic things, and that what we could have spent on that day, it could be given to those less fortunate, and I could take it with me to Syria. If you have a toy that is an extra, think what would you want to do with it? Do you want a new one? Before you have a new one, what would you gonna do? What are you gonna do with the old one? They started have it put it on the side for me, and then I would take it, and they started wanting to see whether that toy really went to some children in Syria or somewhere. They start like it. Look at my teddy bear. It's now in Aleppo. It's in some girl's hand. Bobby, it's in that girl's hand. I think we need to make our children involved in one way or another in what's going on with the world. Since the world now became like one village. I remember back in the day when I used to call from Finland to Syria. It took me 3 hours to connect with my parents in Syria. Now all we have is a WhatsApp, and we can have what we have, from all parts of the world. Everything is so well connected that makes the world so small. But yet children are somehow far away on what's going on in Afghanistan today, the girls in Afghanistan, or children in Syria, or in Yemen, or in the Bangladesh, or in Africa, or in somewhere where they're oppression. So we need to share these moments with them, not to make them feel guilty, but make them or encourage them to be part or to be helpful in some way. What have I done for the other? It's not just about me, me, me. What can I have? I. It's also what I give to someone like me living somewhere in a less fortunate circumstances. So this is my final message. I'd like to urge anyone who can do anything. Don't ever think that I cannot do anything. Yes, you can. You can tons of things. You can go do miracles all alone. What I cannot do anything. Yes, you can. You can collect around you 5 people, and now you have 5 people who can put their energy together. 1 hour each. That's and these 5 hours becomes 50 a week. This is a lot of time. This is a ton of time to help others and just go out there and do it, not just be sitting and passively waiting for someone to solve the world's crisis. Just go out there and do your part. That's all. Bless you all. Thank you.
So I like to part with a tip for the inner child in all of us, is that this little meditation is to imagine, right? We use our imagination. So if we even close our eyes and imagine our favorite flower and our favorite food, especially, let's say, a fruit. So if we imagine it, it becomes a reality. And here we learn how to adjust our inner space, to find the cocooning, to find the safe sanctuary within ourselves and the colors that we are. So if we can just imagine all our favorite colors or shapes or crystals, and flowers in ourselves, and rainbows, all the rainbows that going through our bodies, and how fingers and toes and going to our eyes and the hair, all over. And then we have in this beautiful, beautiful shell, eggshell of colors. And then we breathe in this beautiful rainbow into our hearts. And if we can just count to 8. So 8 counts in and hold, and then 8 counts out. And feel that rainbow going through all the cells in our body. 8 counts in to see if we can count to 8. And then 8 counts out. So that's how we change the landscape in our bodies and our minds and our AI and our IQ.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. 3 important words: gratitude, do something for others, and focus deeply on the inner self. We leave you with these 3 important acts and wish you good luck as we look for a fantastic future for children post-COVID. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rami. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Wai Ching. And thank you, Tahira, the founder of Golden Door, and Andrew Chua for this fantastic format of a section called Generative Dialogues. Thank you.
Thank you, Tallulah. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Wai Ching. Thank you, Tahira.
Thank you.